All right, so before we jump into the exercises, I'm going to go through a couple of things that are really important so that you know exactly how to feel core work and if you're doing it correctly. So one of the biggest things that I see is pushing out versus pulling in. And pushing out, by what I mean by that is like bearing down, like you're going to the bathroom, like you're trying to go to the bathroom but you can't, and you're pushing down. Your belly actually pushes out when you do that. And I'm not kidding when I tell you that if you're pushing out when you're doing core work, all those transverse muscles that we talked about in the anatomy, they're going against the grain of the muscles and against the contraction of the muscles, so you're actually working against them. So I want you to do a little experiment here. Take your hands on your belly, and you're going to take an inhale. Inhale really big, let your belly expand, and then exhale and push down like you're trying to go to the bathroom. You can feel your belly muscles pushing against your hands and pushing out. Now I want you to take your hands all the way around your waist and then pull in. So take an inhale, then exhale, pull everything in, pull your belly button back towards your spine. So you're pulling back, kind of like you're trying to put on tight pants, but you're trying to pull your waist in, kind of cinch it in so that you can button the button. Right, so that's pulling in. So we want to focus on pulling in, not pushing out. So the other idea that you want to think of, and it's not a very nice idea, but it's almost like getting sucker punched. So if someone were going to punch you in the belly, you would recoil back, your core would tighten to resist being punched and having that force pushing into your belly. You wouldn't push out, you would pull in. So you want to think about being sucker punched. What would you do? You would react, you would contract. So that's what we want to do. We want to pull in. So if we're thinking of the anatomy of the core, the transverse abdominals go from the bottom of your rib cage to the top of your pubic bone. We want to make sure that we're contracting all the way around the torso. Even if you take your thumbs around your back, when you pull in, you should feel everything all the way around the entire torso contracting in. What I usually see is that this is the easiest part to contract because we do this motion all the time, right? The upper abdominals. Then it's the side abdominals kind of kick in, and then the lower abdominals are the last ones to come along because they're the hardest. They're also the hardest to separate from our hip movements and our leg movements, which I'll show you later. And finally, last but not least, is behind the belly button. Especially for women who have had kids, this little spot right here can be a complete dead zone. So we want to try to feel it around the entire corset here and around the whole belly button. It's like a circle all the way down and underneath the belly button. So the other thing I want to mention is that you should not feel core work in your butt. Your butt should not have anything to do with your core work. You can feel it in your pelvic floor, but if you're laying on your back and you're doing some core work and you're feeling your butt working like crazy, you're compensating. We don't want to feel core work in our butts. We need to concentrate it on your core. If you feel it in your hip flexors, you're compensating in your hip flexors, anywhere in your hips, we want to refocus it back to the core. So between the rib cage and right between the hips, the stabilizing muscles. And finally, one of the biggest mistakes that I see when doing core work is swinging and momentum in the joints around the core. So what we don't want to have happen is we think we're doing core work and we're doing this kind of thing, right? So if we're doing some core work here and we're trying to keep this really steady, we start to lift the arms and then this happens, right? So we're just moving this part of our body. We're trying to get movement here rather than contracting here and finding the movement where it needs to go.